The penultimate college football playoff rankings just dropped.
Super back.
I have a lot of problems with it. I know Texas is at 2, so you're happy.
Okay.
And you're already in the playoffs, but
Okay.
it seems kind of ridiculous what they did here tonight. And
Pretty criminal.
Yeah, I just want to go over it. I mean, we'll have the rankings up on the side the whole episode so you can look at them. But just, starting from the biggest issue here, we have to talk Alabama.
Roll Tide.
Clearly the committee was saying Roll Tide throughout the evening when they were voting on this because it is crazy to have them at 11.
Yeah.
It's really, really crazy, especially ahead of Miami and then putting South Carolina 14. They're not even 1 or 2 spots behind Bama.
No,
3 spots behind Alabama.
Nowhere
They
close.
dropped Clemson 5 spots for losing to South Carolina, right? Which is fine. I don't really care. Clemson, I'm a Clemson fan.
You're winning, you're in. It doesn't matter.
We're winning, you're in.
Doesn't matter.
But if we're dropping 5 for losing to South Carolina and they're only going up 1 spot for beating us, nuts. I'm not a South Carolina fan. I've never advocated for South Carolina. They're actually my least favorite team in college football because they're our rivals. But I hate when it just feels like there's an injustice done to a team that's very deserving. And so, I just, I kind of want to lay out real quick what my big problem was with these rankings, and then I'll kind of open up to you. I have a couple more notes too, but so the Bama thing I think is just ridiculous. They got blown out by a 6-6 Oklahoma team with the 94th ranked offense in college football out of 136 teams 2 weeks ago and moved them up to 11, not even 12, 11.
Because of a win against Auburn, who isn't ranked either.
Unranked.
And
with a 4-point road loss, Miami, a 4-point road loss to the 22nd ranked 9-3 Syracuse team, they kicked Miami out at 10-2. So not only that, but the fact that they then put such a gap between Alabama and South Carolina, I get they played the head-to-head. It was South Carolina's 6th game of the season where they lost by 2 in Alabama.
It just shouldn't be that big of a gap.
No.
They did. I could see where they're above them by 1, but that big of a gap is ridiculous.
They have multiple opponents where South Carolina outperformed. You can look at the Vanderbilt game where Bama lost in Nashville. South Carolina went in and beat the shit out of them. Multiple other similar opponents. South Carolina's won 6 straight football games, beat multiple ranked teams in that stretch, including a road win to Clemson just last week. And their loss to LSU, which is one of their 3 losses. I know the committee valued injuries so highly last year when they said, you know what, undefeated FSU, you had an injury, so we're not putting you in. South Carolina was winning that game. Sellers got hurt, didn't play the entire second half. The backup quarterback came in. They barely lost with a lot of controversial stuff at the end of the game. But, if you're talking injuries matter, right, injuries didn't affect any of Bama's 3 losses. No one on Bama was hurt, really, for the 24-3 loss to Oklahoma. But South Carolina just doesn't have Sellers get out in the first half of an LSU game early in the season.
They probably win.
They're 10-2.
Yep.
Forget about it. They're already in the playoffs. Bama's out. So there's so much wrong with that for me. I don't know if anything jumped out to you. I have a couple other things, but this was such a bummer because it just feels so biased.
Well, similarly, sticking on that South Carolina note, it's like, I don't understand how you say, okay, South Carolina beats Clemson, South Carolina, a ranked team, and then it drops Clemson to only 5. You look at a team like Ohio State, losing to an unranked, really bad, everybody knows that Michigan is bad.
And they lost everyone this year.
And they lost everyone, yet they only dropped to number 6. That seems really weird to me, too. So it's like, those are definitely my 2 biggest problems with Alabama being so high up. And
I had the same exact feelings, and it just feels like it's a branding thing. Which is what everyone was hoping the college football playoff, the 12 team would avoid, right? Because when you had the 4 teams, it felt a lot like it was like, a borderline Clemson or a borderline Bama or a borderline Georgia had a really big edge over the teams maybe with less of a name
like
brand.
FSU last year, undefeated.
FSU's
held
big,
out for Bama.
Yeah, I know, and I know like a lot of these are like bigger brands. Like if you look at the Miamis of the world or the FSU, those are still big football brands. But as of recent, they haven't been as impactful.
Yeah,
and so everyone's like, we moved to 12 teams, it avoids this. Not really.
Kind of made it worse.
Not really.
Makes it
I don't
worse.
think anyone's going to be happy with this. And I get it. I don't think either of us are saying Ohio State should be out of the playoffs.
No, but they don't deserve a 6.
No. Totally. They are the highest ranked Georgia's the highest ranked 2-loss team, which also, I get Georgia beat Georgia Tech last week, but a 10-2 Georgia team, if they lose the SEC championship, that goes to 10-3, everyone's kind of consensus Georgia's in no matter what, which I think they should be, right? But then you have an SMU team at 11-1 who's going into a championship game, and you're hearing all of the sportscasters saying if they lose their extra game, their 13th game for a championship, and go to 11-2, they're probably going to be out. But then you have a team like Indiana right behind them, who's 11-1, doesn't have to play in a championship game, and is all of a sudden
that doesn't make sense.
No sense. So like, they haven't made up their minds. We were watching after the show, or on the college football playoff ranking show, and the commissioner of the CFP basically said, you know, there's nothing any of these other teams can do.
I hate that so much. I hate that so much. But I also, you know, maybe for next year, because obviously it's too late now, but I would like to know how exactly they prioritize the requirements for these teams. So is it your resume and then strength of schedule and then like, you know, how you're doing or whatever? Or record, or what is it based off? Because if we're looking at teams, again, similar to like Indiana, who's playing unbelievably well, but they have really low strength of schedule, similar to like SMU, and then you look at Georgia, it's like, okay, well, maybe that does explain why Georgia is where they're at, why they're lock-in, is because they've had number one most difficult strength of schedule. But exactly what you go to is like, if they say that their resume is more important, and then they're going into 8 OTs against an unranked Georgia Tech, who's an ACC team, what is that saying about you? Like, where are they ranking these requirements?
I know, and there's also just a couple things they threw in at the end of the rankings here. You know, no one's really looking at this stuff. But this impacts how they grade the teams like Bama versus the teams like Miami or SMU, for example. Like, you know, having Missouri be ranked 19 with no real wins, and blowout losses
against
anytime
any decent
they played
team.
anyone.
Yep.
And then, you know, just not including other better teams in the rank, like that just bumps up the strength of schedule for every SEC team. So that's not something people look at. But when you talk about the teams, you know, you talked about the currently ranked opponents that they've beat. That's always the conversation. Is like, how many ranked opponents that are currently ranked have these teams beat? So when you put teams like Illinois, who haven't beat anyone, 9-3, got blown out by everyone, any tough team they've played, and then Missouri, same scenario. When you have them at 19-21, that really, really helps the SEC and the Big Ten.
For sure.
And then you have, you know, the teams in the ACC or the Big 12, for example, maybe with better records or similar records, harder strength of schedules, better wins, not included in that mix at all. So, yeah, that's just some of the problems I had.
I mean, those waters get real muddy because, I mean, it's what we were talking about 2 nights ago where it's, or yesterday actually, where it's like, how do you grade each conference? And it's like the only way to do that is these like figurative, okay, with the average Big Ten versus the average ACC. But it's like, it's exactly what you said. It's based off these fragmented kind of like imaginary scenarios. You could then say, okay, this conference is more difficult than this conference, which then impacts every team that's actually ranked and going in there. It gets really weird, gets really strange, and I don't know what the solution is, but it's like, I do think something almost has to change because
I agree. And like one thing I do want to say, because I talk about Penn State on every episode, they're now the 3 seed. You know, their only ranked opponent they've beat is that Illinois team that every ranking is kind of like Illinois and Missouri are in there, and you're like expecting them to be there, but no one can ever really explain why. They're like, oh, well, they lost to good teams. It's like, okay, who did they beat?
Yeah,
like, I don't know.
You have to do something good, not do something non-negative.
State is another one of those teams. They have one ranked win against 21 Illinois, and because of that, I mean, their only other ranked game they played was a loss to Ohio State.
But they played it close, lost by one score.
Sure, but the 3, I get they've only lost 1 game, but, you know, having them be kind of a lock no matter what and again, looking at SMU, who's also 11-1, and if people are saying if they lose, they're going to be out. And I know those are hypothetical scenarios, but like we've talked on the podcast about, you know, what happens if they let Bama in. And, you know, Mario, who's not here right now, but he was basically like, oh, the SEC's not overrated. They're going to do what's right. Bama's not going to be in. And then you put Bama at 11. All of a sudden, it's like, well, dude, like this is a clear bias, and they're screwing some of these other teams with 10, 11 wins for maybe a 9-win Bama who is lost recently, or like a Penn State who hasn't really had to play anyone. Not saying Penn State should be out regardless. They're in a championship game. So, they're going to be in. But just the way they seed these teams, the 5 seed in the playoffs, the highest ranked
the easiest path.
champion, it's the easiest path. You
by a
play the
mile.
12, you
By a
play the
mile.
worst team, which will be a power, or the worst conference champion let in, and then you go and play the 4 seed, which is, again, the worst of the 4 buys. So that just feels like they're kind of handing Penn State that. Maybe they let Notre Dame slide above them if they lose to Oregon. Maybe they punish them for playing in a conference championship game. It will be interesting to see. I think this is.
But Notre Dame has nothing to play for, so I don't see
They're not
them
playing
moving.
a game.
Well, yeah, so
I'm
I
saying
don't.
if Penn State loses.
It would still be weird though, because it's why would you reward a team? I guess.
Well, that's the same argument with
it's like
SMU. Same thing. You're basically if you're saying SMU can drop by playing a championship game, you're rewarding the teams who have strategic losses to not make their championship and not have to play another game.
Yeah.
Like SMU's above Indiana, they're both 11-1. So if the committee tells me no matter what happens, if SMU loses, they're gonna stay right there, then I'm cool with that. But if they're like, hey, if you lose,
You're out.
Indiana goes
in.
above you
Yeah.
for not playing. That's just stupid.
Yeah.
That is not what college football is about. You want to play for conference championships. You don't want this weird structure where it incentivizes like maybe
Not
you lose
making
to the
it-
best team or rest your players so you can, stay healthy for the playoffs, because if you don't play in the game and you have enough wins, then you're good to go. So
Yeah.
that's the one thing. It'll be interesting to see how the committee finalizes it, but kind of discouraging today when you looked at everything. Especially, I feel bad for the South Carolina people. I really do, because
Yeah.
that
Sucks. You
it
did
really
everything
sucks.
you could. They finished out the year so strong, and I mean,
if
you
they
just get punished for it.
And if they said no 3-loss teams get in regardless, then that's fine. I mean,
Yeah.
South Carolina's coach Shane Beamer, who I actually really like, he said multiple times, I get we have 3 losses. There's a lot of deserving teams. I get we have 3 losses. But the fact that they just put a 3-loss BAM at 11, not
Doesn't
even
make
12,
sense.
not even borderline. It's
Yeah.
like they're in. And it's just, I don't know. That feels dirty to me.
I almost think the playoffs need to change again. I almost feel like it should go to an 8-team playoff.
Go back to the BCS.
No,
Yes,
but I
have
think
a random computer vote on who the best 2 teams statistically are, and just let them duke it out for the championship.
how about you just take people from Europe, ask them randomly, and then just
random
pick a
poll.
school.
Just random poll. You're
But,
gonna start getting like Ball State in the championship.
Oh.
Great school name, by the way. Ball State. And
All of Ireland is going to rally for Notre Dame to just make every single
I mean,
college
that's
football
what-
championship ever.
That's basically the committee now.
Yeah.
A loss to Northern Illinois.
It
Doesn't matter.
No problem.
You're the 4
No
seed.
problem.
You're top 4.
Well, it's because they're not in championship. So, you know.
Because they're not in a conference to play in a championship.
Yeah.
But
Yeah,
you can
yeah.
lose to Northern Illinois and be the 4 seed. But SMU in a conference, 11-1, undefeated in conference play, is at risk. So
Yeah.
yeah.
I almost feel like maybe don't give buys to conference champions.
Why?
Maybe that's the
You
way
mean just give buys to the top 4 ranked
to the
teams?
top 4, regardless of what conference they're in.
That would
and
give
then-
Penn State and Oregon and Notre Dame a bye.
And
Ugh.
Texas. And tips.
Okay. Yeah. So see, now I figured out why you said that. I was like, what are you talking about? Oh, there it is. But yeah, I guess, here we are. 1 week left. We've been doing these rankings reactions after every announcement, and it's been pretty fun. You guys have been loving them.
Ranking Sunday.
Yeah,
is
hit
gonna be
that
the final
subscribe
ranking.
button if you're not already. We passed 1.5 thousand subscribers. You guys
Bang.
are insane. We got a lot of really cool stuff coming up for you. Drop that subscribe button. Drop a comment. Let us know what you think of the video, and hit that like, because we love to see the support here.
Oh, yeah.
Good luck to whatever team you're rooting for. Sorry if you're a South Carolina fan, and go Tigers in the championship this week.
Follow along for the Mortal this week. We're hitting.
Oh yeah.